Welcome to this episode of the OLA Adult Ed Faith Formation Podcast, and welcome officially to the season of Advent. This is the first Sunday of Advent. Advent starts a new liturgical year, and this new liturgical year, last liturgical year, we were in the Gospel of Mark. This new liturgical year, as the reading from the first Sunday of Advent indicates, we will be in the year of Luke because the church has a cycle of three yearly readings, right? Year A is Matthew, year B is Mark, year C is Luke, with John being sprinkled into each of the years. This upcoming year, which starts today, the first Sunday of Advent, is year C, which is the Gospel of Luke. So we will be in the Gospel of Luke for this first Sunday of Advent, specifically Luke 21. And this is another case where the church gives us kind of a split reading. It's Luke 21, verses 25 to 28, and then it skips over to verses 34 to 36. So quite a bit going on before we look at the actual gospel passage. It's the first Sunday of Advent, a new liturgical year. The year is the year of Luke. Our passage comes from Luke. It comes from Luke chapter 21. It's a split passage, 25 to 28, 34 to 36. And on top of all of that, if that's not enough, in Luke 21, this is Luke's recording of something we talked about a couple of podcasts ago, a couple of weeks ago, because Luke is referencing Jesus talking about the end of the world and some of the signs that will accompany it. All right. So, and again, the lectionary drops us into the middle of Luke 21. So with all of that going on, I'm going to do my best to try and kind of unpack this in a manner that we can walk away, hopefully, understanding more than we did when we started. So with all of that said, let's make sure we've got those principles close to the hand. Context, context, context. Read, watch, and listen closely because words have meaning. As always, Max is behind the camera. We're on the campus of St. Bonaventure High School. So let's dive in to the gospel reading for the first Sunday of Advent, Luke 21, 25 to 28, 34 to 36. This is how it starts. Jesus said to his disciples, "There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on earth nations will be in dismay, perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will die of fright in anticipation of what is coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken." Let me stop there. Jesus here is giving all these kind of cosmic signs. The sun, the moon, the stars, the heavens being shaken. This goes back to something we mentioned 2 podcasts ago, two Sundays ago, where the prophets, you might recall this from that podcast, when the prophets, when they would indicate that something really meaningful, something really great, something really kind of really magnificent is going to happen, so to speak, they would use cosmic type language to convey just how monumental this thing would be. So in talking here about the end of the world, the last day, and how monumental obviously that's going to be, Jesus picks up on the prophet's usage of a cosmic language, where the prophets then and Jesus is saying, look, to grasp the how big a deal this is going to be, it's like cosmic events happening. It's like Jesus would say in Mark, the sun being darkened, the moon not giving its light, the stars falling from the sky, the powers of heaven. That cosmic-like language is meant to convey how monumental an event this is going to be. So Jesus is using prophetic cosmic language at the beginning of this passage here that the lectionary gives us to indicate how monumental this event of the end of the world is going to be. Now, with that in place, let's pick up because Jesus continues. And then they will see the Son of Man himself coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these signs begin to happen, stand erect and raise your heads because your redemption is at hand. So Jesus is saying, look, before, at the end of the world, the second coming, Jesus is going to come on the clouds of heaven with the angels, right? And he's basically telling us, look, when this happens, if you've been following me, if you've been my disciple, if you believe, if you've been following me and what I've been telling you, right, this is not necessarily a time to be frightened. It's a time to stand erect. Because if you've lived your life accordingly, the end of the world basically indicates your redemption is at hand. If you've been doing what you should be doing, if you've been living the Christian life, if you've been a disciple of mine, rather than the end of the world being dreaded and terrifying and frightening for you, stand erect because your redemption is at hand, right? That's what he's getting to here. Then he says, in the meantime, to make sure that you're prepared for when this day comes, he tells us, beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life, and that day catch you by surprise like a trap. So he's basically saying, look, the end of the world's going to come, but if you've been living your life according to the gospel, if you've been a true disciple of mine, rather than dread it and be frightened by it, in a sense, be joyful, be happy because your redemption is at hand. But in order to get to that point where you're standing erect on that last day, right, you want to make sure in the meantime, your lives, right, that you don't become lax and you don't become lukewarm and you don't let the anxieties of daily life overtake you, okay? Because Jesus says, and Mark records it in his gospel, when that day comes, no one will know. So you don't want to be surprised. You don't want to be caught unprepared on that day. That's what Jesus is getting to here in the second half of that passage. He continues, for that day will assault everyone, meaning, that day is inescapable. There will come a day when individually we'll die, and there will come a day when the world ends. So no one is going to be exempt from either your particular personal judgment or the end of the world. That day will assault everyone who lives on the face of the earth. And again, he hammers home the same point. Because of that, because it is inevitable that each of us individually will die and go through our own personal judgment, and the end of the world will come, because of that, be vigilant. Not some of the time, not most of the time, not a majority of the time. Words have meaning, right? Be vigilant at all times and pray that you have the strength to escape the tribulations that are imminent and to stand before the Son of Man. So this is a clear indication by Jesus that this is going to happen. There will be signs before it happens. But in the meantime, rather than worry about, okay, is the end of the world coming tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 5 years from now, okay? Nobody knows, all right? So keep your eye on the ball. Don't get caught up on when it's going to happen, because it's going to happen, okay? Focus on being prepared. So whenever it does happen, whether it's tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, or 5 years from now, whenever it does happen, be prepared. Be ready for it. So when it does happen, you can stand erect, that you're ready for it, right? And you can stand before the Son of Man on your judgment day. That's really the import, was not so much being bothered by trying to predict when it's going to happen, because nobody knows. We can't control that. What we can control is how prepared we are when it does happen, because it will happen. So that's kind of the big picture, kind of the takeaway of this particular gospel passage. One other thing I might mention before we close down the episode is a question some people have. They're saying, okay, wait a second, Charles, I'm a little confused here. This is the first Sunday of Advent. Advent prepares us for the birth of Christ, right? Christmas. Why does the church give us a passage talking about the end of the world and his second coming on the first Sunday of Advent, which prepares us for his birth and his first coming? And it's a legitimate, it's a valid question, because if this is the first Sunday of Advent, and Advent prepares us for his first coming, his birth, shouldn't we be reading a passage about that birth? Instead, the church gives us a passage about essentially his second coming and the end of the world. So why does the church do that? Well, the church does that for a very good reason. Here's the reason. Yes, Advent prepares us for the first coming, his birth, right? But in preparation, what the church is telling us here is, look, everybody, in preparation for his first coming, his birth, all right, don't lose sight of he's going to have a second coming, all right, the last day. So just as we want to use Advent to prepare for his first coming, the church also wants us to use Advent to prepare for his second and last coming. So there is a reason why the church gives us a passage about his second coming during a season when we're preparing for his first coming. Because the church says, look, if Advent is a season of preparation, which it is, then we should prepare not just for his first coming, but also for his second coming as well. That's why the church starts the Advent season with this particular passage. So with that, unbelievable. I'm 13 and a half minutes underneath the 15-minute mark. Now, I could talk for 2 more minutes and use up the time, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you good Catholics a break. So with that, thank you for watching the podcast. Hopefully you've gained a better understanding of what the passage is all about and why the church gives us this passage as the first Sunday of Advent. And until next time, as always, take care, God bless, and have a blessed and fruitful Advent season. Take care, everybody.